Welcome to the Total Wireless Store, where total confidence awaits.
My wife loves when I DJ our car rides, but overages get in the way of my groove.
Don't worry, you got this with Total Wireless. Right now, get 50% more data when you bring your number to any qualifying service plan starting at $35. All in the nation's best 4G LTE network.
Wiki, 50% more?
Now go find that perfect DJ name.
New York, discover the Total Wireless stores and get total confidence. The latest phones, the best network, all at great prices. Ends January 2nd, 2019. $35 plans and up. Excludes ports from TracFone Wireless Inc. brands. Terms at totalwireless.com.
And welcome to Aquarian Radio at aquarianradio.com. This is an episode of the Alien Contact Organization, and today's episode is about the digital moon. And our panel consists of myself, I'm Janet Kira Lesson, Reverend John Polk, Bret Colin Sheppard, Karen Christine Patrick, and Teresa J. Morris. And I'm going to pass the baton to Karen, who is going to do a little introduction about this episode and bring on our guest of honor, Bret Colin Sheppard. Hold on one second while I put the thing. Karen, are you with us?
I am. Yes, I'm really glad to talk to everyone today. I kind of know this topic really well because this is very gleefully a chance for me to feature Bret Colin Sheppard's work, and we call ourselves Team Sheppard and Patrick, working on our research. And Bret Colin Sheppard, he's been a researcher on lunar anomalies. He started the Lunar Anomaly Research organization, Lunar Anomaly Research Society. You can find that on Facebook. And he's been looking at lunar anomalies quite some time. And besides the anomalies that people normally think of buildings and mining operations and that sort of thing, Bret's also worked on a kind of a different area, embedded imagery in space agency pictures. So this has been his work for a couple of years. It's a little bit different, and I've been working with him, and I watch him how he does his process. And his discoveries has led to this discovery of embedded imagery. It's very strange aspects of anomaly research, and it's going to blow the doors off when people realize that extraterrestrials and extradimensionals, that's another form of beings out there, have been communicating through these images, through light encoded imagery embedded into the photographs, and it overcomes the language barriers and it communicates a lot of interesting things. And we work on decoding it. This is something we work on together, trying to understand what we're looking at. And surprisingly, it's been giving us clues to human origins from space. And Bret is working on a book, Digital Moon. It'll be coming out fall/winter. Digitalmoonbook.com is the website. And that's going to have his whole story, which includes a time anomaly. And take it away, everyone, from there. Thank you, and I'm so glad to be with you and to feature my life partner and my research partner, Bret Colin Sheppard.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, your turn, and could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Thank you. My name is Bret Colin Sheppard, and I have become a writer, and I'm writing about a past history of mine that coalesces on a certain path that was absolutely guided by extraterrestrials, in my opinion. in fact. So, some of my background is when I was 15 years old in 1982, I was shown a large series of images that were like cuttings that people do of anomalies from space images, and just different cuttings, and they were all colorful and seemed to be painted, and all that. And I was shown these by a lady from Stanford Research Institute. Her name was Amina Zarita, at the time, and I remember her name because my instructor used to, he basically teased her because he couldn't pronounce her name, and he called her Noxema or something. And they had me stay after class. It was the last class of the day, so I don't know how many hours I was there, but it was dark when I went home. She had many spools of slides to show, and she was just clicking away at these different slides and asking me how I feel about that one and how I feel about that one. And that's pretty much, mostly all she was asking. She'd comment herself on a few of them and say, "Oh, that's really kind of risque," and that's this and that, because some of them were of different, sexually oriented type images, and these were all, come to find out, many years later, 30 years later, when I started the Lunar Anomaly Research Society. I was interested in the artistic aspect of these anomalies people were finding on Mars and on the Moon. And at first I was kind of tinkering with it, just like everyone else, and I was finding buildings and different types of structures and what I perceived artistically as, structures and all of this within our lunar images. And I had sort of an eye for it because I could see things three-dimensionally. I'm slightly dyslexic that way, so I can see all the way around an object. I'm a good sculptor, and I was looking at one of these images one day, and that someone came into the group and showed me. Her name was Amy, and she showed me this image of a Mars strip, and she said, "I really want you to look at it really close and good and tell me what you see, And I was thinking, oh my God, those are like the same words that lady used, back. So I was looking at this image, and it was the one with the water spouts that J.P. Skipper had spotted, and the one Courtney Brown observed with the Farsight Institute with the remote sensing. And I was looking below the water spouts in that, and it looked like a little ancient ruins or civilization or something. There was like a Roman soldier, a huge statue of a Roman soldier laying there with his hand out, and a little E.T. lady sitting in his hand or something. And I started looking at that really close, and I was thinking, gosh, that looks familiar. Where did I see that before? Well, I pulled up the picture that I had from back then. And it was the same exact picture of one of the things that I saw in 1982. And I was thinking, there must be something to this, that I'm seeing all of these things that I saw back then. So I started looking in the images, especially the older Mars and lunar orbiter images. And I noticed that there were these embedded, like two-dimensional things, kind of as a hidden picture inside these black and white photos, So I was looking at them deeper and deeper, and I started seeing cartoon characters. I started seeing ancient heroes and gods and goddesses and spider people and all kinds of stuff. It became very interesting artistically. So I started colorizing them a little bit, and I noticed that these colorizations I was doing were the exact same thing I saw back in 1982. So it was a very strange time anomaly thing where I was guided on some kind of path. And I started remembering things from earlier childhood, how they taught me how to look for hidden pictures, hidden images and whatnot. They gave me tons of highlights magazines, and, they had a lot of picture puzzles in there. And I started talking to different people about this thing, because it became very disturbing to me that I was on this controlled type path, that I didn't have my own path or something. It seemed very guided. I've been financially assassinated to get back on the path. There were different aspects of it within my life that were guiding me to do this type of work. And I started talking to people like Rupert Sheldrake about the morphogenic field and different aspects, because he used picture puzzles as an experiment on the BBC one evening. And it was to see if these picture puzzles, if people would get them right away, of course they didn't. And when they did get them, if people of another country, when he showed them to the other country, would get it sooner because it was out in the morphogenic field that people already got it, and to see if people were connected. Very interesting experiments. Anyway, does anyone have any questions about what he said so far?
I'd like to start with TJ. TJ, would you like to ask a question and maybe tell our audience just a little bit, a short bio about yourself, who you are as one of our panel members, and then ask Bret a question. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. If you don't know me, with Alien Contact Org, Janet and I started it a couple of years ago with a gentleman in UK, and it's been very rewarding as a radio show, and we're happy that Karen has brought Bret, and I'm really looking forward to his specialty. Apparently, it's moon anomalies, and I have written a few books and gotten to be on a few radio shows, and just really enjoy meeting people. You can find us on, just Google my name, Teresa J. Morris, or see my books on Amazon, and mostly find us here on radio, here with Janet and TJ Morris Radio. So let's get back to the show thingy here. Apollo 12, now all your moon anomalies, there are very many people that we know that does this, and I'm very interested, Bret, in how you got all organized and got all these things, because there's so many groups out there with doing this now, and I'm from the old school. Back when I was growing up, my husband worked at NASA, and it was very classified. So apparently this is a whole new movement of something to do with the Internet and what I guess the government is allowing us to see and play with now, because they used to airbrush everything out when I was a kid. So you want to talk to that? Or
yes, I will address that. They still airbrush everything out.
Oh, okay.
So what's neat is recently I've had some actual control images dropped in my lap. Some that were before they touched them up. Types of images, and I can assure you that there are things that they definitely wanted to airbrush out. Including the stars in the background. And one of the reasons why they said that would confuse people is because there was a lot of dust on the lunar lens, and different things that were flying around in the atmosphere. And also during the scanning process, when they scanned some of this data in the scanner, you know how there's like little objects that get caught in the scanner or whatever, and it kind of takes a picture with them inside the image,
Right.
So
they don't
much
use
of that
as an excuse.
Much of that was used as an excuse.
Uh-huh.
And what's neat is I can see the difference between what they were talking about, the legitimate things to airbrush out to make their postcards look good, mm-hmm. and the actual things that are flying on the surface or just sitting out there on the surface that do not look like they're anything natural.
Well, where are all these slides coming from? What's the history of them? It's all coming from NASA or American satellites or Russian, or you got the history on it?
I got some of these slides from some of the people that were working in the imagery department at the time in the
what?
60s.
NASA?
Yeah. Yes.
Ooh.
Neato, huh?
They don't lose their clearance. Yeah, they won't be working there anymore.
No, apparently there's in fact, neither one of them do.
Yeah, I was going to say that's not possible. If people want to eat.
Correct. Anyway, one of the images that one of them gave me were actually thrown in the bin to be incinerated, along with all of the other proofs that they made so that scientists could look at them and whatnot.
Wow, they were sort of whistleblowers.
And they were archiving the rest
we had
of them.
Whistleblowers, huh?
Yes, they were archiving the rest of them. And they were burning the ones that were, physical evidence of any kind.
Yeah.
Well,
I appreciate
a couple of these people, a couple of these people, they took the images out when they left. You there?
Okay, sorry about that. I guess there's a lot of talk over. So because of the delay on the internet there, it's better if just one person talks uninterrupted for a while, and then when they're done, say I'm done, and then we'll have somebody else talk. Let's pass the baton over to Reverend John Polk. Aloha, are you there?
Cool. I am.
Okay,
Great to be
John,
here again.
So tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, and then go ahead and ask Bret a question or a comment on something he's already talked about.
Okay, look forward to it. Anyway, my name is Reverend John M. Polk. I'm an international metaphysical minister. I'm a Reiki master teacher. I'm the founder of Wolf Spirit Ministries, and with the assistance of Bret Sheppard and Karen Christine Patrick, I just published my first book entitled Yahweh the Biblical God is an Alien. And I remember a number of months ago, we're trying to figure out a cover for the book. And Karen said, you know what, let me defer to Bret. Bret will come up with something. He's entirely slammed with everything that he's working on. But I know, give him a little bit of time and he'll come up with something. So he found a picture of an old dagger with Baal on it, the old Canaanite deity from the finishing times. And there's lions on either side of him. And he's facing one, and he's got his hands on both of them, but he's facing one, kind of like pushing it away. And Bret kind of described it to me as the duality that this deity is going through in his own mind, body, spirit. And I'm like, Bret, do you know how much this rings home with me? As I am a Leo, and you come up with the whole lion kind of motif. And then I wear a gold necklace with a golden lion on the necklace. And it just resonated with me so much. And then I start to think introspectively within myself, and I start digging into my alien self, and I start communicating with Yahweh, who I channel. And I'm like, Yahweh, what do you think of this artwork? And Yahweh said that Baal was actually a part of one of his many pantheons that he had. And I'm like, wow. So I told that to Karen and Bret, and it kind of resonated with them. And the cover of my book, I think it's incredible. And it just got published on Gumroad, on Create Space. Thank you, Janet, for explaining that whole process to us. And Kindle also. And I'm very excited about it. And we'll send it back to you, Janet.
Oh, could you comment on Bret? The first part of the show is a focus on Bret and his research. And if you could just ask Bret a question or comment on what he just presented.
Oh, okay. Absolutely. So I was reading up on you, and you had mentioned light-encoded imagery communication. Can you explain to us exactly what that means, and can you give us some specific examples?
Yeah, I can go into the background on that. There was speculation about the possibility of the existence of intelligent life on the moon and nearby planets, and it spawned some very interesting experiments early on, way back in 1822. Dr. Gauss and later von Littrow in 1842 and Cross in 1869. Tesla was also a part of some of that later on. What they did was they used sound, and they got sound frequencies out of space when they pointed their sound telescope toward Mars and toward the moon and so on, and they would collect the data from the frequency and make a digital image out of it. And this digital image, actually, I analyzed one of them, and there were actually different faces in there, different beings, and so on. And I said this very much correlates with what I'm doing nowadays. I'm looking at what's wonderful is NASA had digitized the images, and they lowered the resolution by more than half, which completely degraded any detail, and it took out it made the backgrounds black for the most part, and then they would take an airbrush or a brush and literally paint out any white dots or anything, in the background that would show up with black paint. And when they degraded the digital image, it brought it down to a digital frequency, because digitizing anything is extraterrestrial. It's where the technology comes from. And it allowed a certain frequency of communication, and it was all completely graphic communication, you know. And I would see different types of beings, and very specific and themed beings, you know, like gods and goddesses, like what, you know, from the ancient Pelagian Empire and the ancient Dacian Empire. And I would literally see, you know, Theseus and the Minotaur and Zeus and Hera, and very specific, you know, Andromeda, also Mercury, or Hermes, I guess, would be the same kind of correlation. And these images were very coded, you know, in a storyboard type communication that anyone could understand if they could, if it could be brought out of the image and they could see it. See, since we humans, we have our RGB coloring with our eyes. That's how we process these types of images. So I started coloring them in RGB, and it would bring out what I did was I tinted them so that it didn't degrade what was actually there in the image, so that people could perhaps see it a little bit clearer with color, you know. And basically, they made all of the images black and white, and they're not all black and white. Many of them were done in color with color film, and they were also on film. So there were actual film strips and movies of these old lunar orbiter images in sequence, you know. So there was a whole sequence of like Lunar Orbiter 1, and they only literally published like 29 seconds of film, you know, to the public for Lunar Orbiter 1. That's it. And so I went through some of these images, and they were exactly what I saw in 1982, and it's like no big surprise, you know. And I've seen some images that were literally given to me from insiders, and no one on Earth has ever seen these images, but maybe 3 people in the entire universe or something. But I remember it's like looking at yesterday. You know, I remember these images, seeing them when I was 15 years old, like it was yesterday. That's the strange thing about it. So this guided communication is guiding me to show people this somehow, you know, and that's the way I've been doing it. Is I've been kind of coloring them or illuminating them and bringing them out in RGB so that the human eyes can see it. And it also has to do a lot with perception, you know. So it's almost a retraining of perception, which is the language of the extraterrestrials. It is the training of a certain frequency and perception.
Fascinating. So it's my turn. I'm Janet Keir-Lesson, and I'm the originator of Aquarian Radio with my husband, Dr. Sasha Lesson, and I started doing radio with T.J. Morris back in 2012, and we've been going bonkers since then, having a lot of fun. I'm an author. I have books on the Anunnaki, and you can just Google my name, Janet Keir-Lesson. I've co-authored some with my husband. I have books on relationships, on Tantra, on Anunnaki, and extraterrestrials, and I'm just a very diverse person. And so I'm here primarily today to focus on Bret and his information, because I think it's a critical key to this puzzle for us to figure out what's going on in our solar system here. I know the universe is complex, but maybe we can get the story of the past couple 100,000 years, and who's been, or maybe a million years or so, and who's been interacting with humanity. So my question to you, Bret, is you've been looking at this material since '82, and do you have any kind of conclusions? You said this was the gods, to me and my cosmology, the gods are the Anunnaki, and I know that your beloved Karen is a A.R. Borden Anunnaki researcher. Have you, some kind of hypothesis about what's going on?
Some of it I don't have to have a hypothesis with. There are literally structures on the moon. I've seen them, and these particular structures, the building types and the sculptures and whatnot, that are in the ruins of this particular structure are very, very tied to the whole Anunnaki thing. They look like they were built, by humans-ish, and we definitely have space ancestors, There's absolutely no doubt about that in my mind, I've seen some things that are going to come out in public soon that, everybody's going to see, and it bridges that particular gap because like you guys, I've been very very interested in human origins and where did we come from and who am I and all this, And I looked back at all of the Anunnaki material as well, the Elam Nish and all of Epic of Gilgamesh and all of that, and I studied it, and I came to realize that, for one thing, that they told us that ancient Greece was much later than that. And that is not true. Ancient Dacia, Tracia, Greece, these areas of Turkey, Istanbul, Cappadocia, different areas, also along the Caucasus Mountains and whatnot, have been a very much thriving community way before the Sumerians. So it made me realize that there are, they're digging up like Göbekli Tepe, which is about 6,000 years older than Sumeria, So there's definitely evidence that civilizations existed before or prior to that. One thing they can be credited for is more of a grasp on a certain type of writing that was Illyrian, to begin with, and from Albania, that area. And there's definitely things in history that we're not told, and we're kind of told that the ancient Egypt and all of these places, are much younger than Sumeria, which is supposed to be like the oldest civilization. There's also one in Iran that's much older than Sumeria, and all of them, going back that far, focus on the moon and moon goddesses and moon gods, Mena, Selene, Cybele, Diana, Artemis. These are all moon people. So it made me realize that the connection there has to have been the moon, maybe as a station that they came to or they escaped to. So now here's the other thing. On the moon, there are ruins on the moon, and things don't decay on the moon because there's no oxygen really. So there used to either be oxygen for that to have happened. I can tell you, it looked like somebody took it and it looked like a war happened. That's what it looks like. It looks like that it was blown up. But so that's the thing. When I look back at that type of question, why are there ruins on the moon? There shouldn't be ruins on the moon. It should look brand new,
Right.
And that's what we know scientifically today, but it's so complex. They've formed this complexity in history, and they're not telling us what really happened. When scientists really look back at this, and try and correlate it with our own human history, so to speak, or our not-so-human history, I would say.
All right, thank you. Karen, your turn. A little bit about who you are, brief bio, and then focus on Bret and his information, which, of course, you are well aware of and quite an expert in your own right.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'll do a brief bio. I'm a researcher, and been interested in all kinds of. Well, of course, I'm one of the kids that watched the whole Apollo mission as a little kid and was very impressed by it. I kept running. I was about 6 or 7. I kept running outside. I'd watch them on the TV for a few minutes, and I'd run outside and look at the moon and try to see them. And of course, my parents had to explain that they were really, really tiny. And I said, well, okay, let's get a telescope, but they're still too tiny. So, yeah, I was very excited. It was a huge, like every little kid wanted to be an astronaut and all that. So I was very interested in spacey stuff, got interested in science fiction, got interested in all this stuff for a long time, researched it kind of on my own. And then I finally, raised with my kids, and I really wanted to get into it. So I, with Bret, Sheppard, and Neville Thompson is a friend of ours, we founded, and we also have Ross Curley in there, we founded the Earth Anomaly Research Society. So that was talking about crop circles and pyramids and sinkholes and all that kind of stuff because I was a fan of Charles Fort. Charles Fort was a gentleman in the 1800s who cataloged all the weird things that were happening that he could find in newspapers, like when it would rain frogs or, they had crop circles even back then. And lights in the sky, going all the way back to the 1800s, there are historical UFO sightings that he and others wrote about. So I met Bret. We worked on Earth anomaly things, and then I got interested in his lunar anomaly work and the work of lots of other anomalies. And now there's UAFAH, United Family of Anomaly Hunters, and I talked about it with Billy, Coach Billy, a few shows back. But this is just, people are beginning to realize there's a big story here. And I have to say, when Bret first started posting his colorized images, I have the opposite eye issue than him. He has sharp vision. I have the opposite. I'm somewhat visually impaired, especially for three-dimensional stuff. So when I came to be with him and be his partner and research partner, I have been going through a mind-eye training thing. And I've been learning to see what he's talking about. And now, because I've been with him, I kind of understand how he looks at images. I'm beginning to see these things myself. I've even found a couple anomalies myself by now. But I'm also an Anunnaki researcher because I'm an Anunnaki contactee, and that's my connection with Janet and Sasha and AR Borden Group. And when we got to the part where Bret found all of the god and goddesses' legendary figures in one image, it's in one image of the far side of the moon, that's when a very strange thing happened, is that we dug into that, and we did make a couple of videos, so I'll try to get that information for people at the end of the show. We made some videos about the legendary figures on the far side of the moon, because in this image, it didn't show the Greek version of these Greek human origins. It showed that there would have been like togas and sandals, and I was a historical costumer, so I know what people wore when, where. And so it wasn't those stories. It was an older story. And right at that time, I felt very guided. Stuff just started coming at me, popping up in my Facebook and my emails. A book by a Romanian gentleman, Nicolae Densusianu, from 100 years ago, cataloged all the folklore from Romania over a 40-year period of time, and I began to see that the stories I was looking at in these images matched that older telling of those stories. The clothing was more for people that live in the mountains, and that's when Brad and I talk about the Pelagian Empire and the Dacia, Tracia, around the Black Sea, all of that, the Caucasus Mountains. We're talking about that era. And the language was Illyrian, and it was one tribe still speaks that, and then the alphabet is Pelagian alphabet, which is sometimes also associated with Zinca. And like I said, I'm not a linguist. I'm not 100% on that. But the idea is that as you continue to go back and back, you find stories about, and Illyria, that word, Illyria, means people from the stars. So the indigenous people and the older cultures knew that we came from space, we came from the stars. I'm part Native American. The Native American said that, that we have our space brothers up in space. And so this is a story covered up in our modern times for different reasons. And so I've been with Bret, on this discovery quest of what, and the fact that there are photos on the depicting this on the moon, we're still speculating what that could be. One speculation is that when the images were taken, on a spacecraft and then beamed back to Houston or ground control Earth, that some kind of imagery was slided in there by our ET and ED friends who are much more advanced than we are. Let's just say that. They can do this. And the images of faces, when he was talking about that Mars, early Mars imagery, the people at that time saw the faces too. They just couldn't believe they were seeing faces. And it was because this was our first foray into space, and they're putting, hey, it's like a welcome sign, here we are. I'm glad you found us. Then the other speculation is that it's actually, some of the imagery we're seeing is holograms on the moon. That's not a far-fetched idea either, because quite a few people are talking about a lunar hologram refresh wave. There's some research that there's something, a wave washes over the surface of the moon, and what the heck is that? It looks like something on a television or whatnot. And there's a lot of stories about holograms related to the moon. Insider reports that the moon, there is an alien base up there, and the controls have pop-up hologram displays on there. And so this is a story that's going to really astonish people. It's been coming out in bits and pieces, but people who really want to believe, the reality construct, they want to believe the stories about heroic America going to the moon's surface. And we're going to have to suck it up and find out that there's an alternative story, but it's a lot more fun and a lot more interesting, and it reconnects us with Paradigm Galactic. And what I would like to ask Bret to talk about just a little bit is all the different manipulations that you've discovered that have been done to space images, because it's not just airbrushing, it's also other things as well, if you could briefly talk about that.
Oh, yeah. There's one of the basic manipulations that are done, especially to all of the Apollo images, is because you can see it, the background, and it should be stars or something. You should be able to see some planetoids or stars in the background. What they've done is they've decreased the resolution to make it blurry. So that the background, when you zoom into it, isn't very clear and pixelated. It's very kind of blurry, pixelated. And then what they will do is decrease the brightness and up the contrast a little bit, and that will darken the background almost black. So they're not like literally painting the background black or anything. They're actually decreasing the brightness and upping the contrast. That's why there's the very stark black areas and very stark white areas in the lunar images. And what they do, if they miss a spot that's like a pinpoint of light or something, they'll actually literally airbrush that out with black. And I've seen the little airbrush spots, in the images as well. So artistically, I know what they're doing, as far as that goes. Some of the other things that they'll do is they'll try to actually mimic what the extraterrestrials are putting in there to try and confuse people, to convolute things. And I can always tell because it's always very Masonic symbolism, that's in there. Either that or it's from Disney, the old Pinocchio stories, or literally Mickey Mouse with a projector and Pluto and all that. I've got a picture of that. It's very, very strange, the type of manipulation. It seems like, as far as some kind of Anunnaki thing or whatever, that it could be that there are factions, involved in different frequencies. So it kind of seems like that to me. Some of the other direct manipulations, to hide these things, besides making them very low resolution, are to actually wash out the image so that it's very, very light, And the other thing they'll do is obfuscate some of the images by blurring different areas that look too much like something. Looks too much like a sculpture of for instance, a goat sitting on a ledge in Copernicus crater or something, or an old man petting his dog in Copernicus crater or something like that. And they'll obfuscate it so that it kind of looks more like some kind of pseudo-natural CGI type surface. Later on, after when the digital age came about and traditional photography kind of left, they really started manipulating things really heavy with CGI. And it seems like the more they did, the more digital information from extraterrestrials would get in the images. And it is a very bizarre thing. They would change the image, and you couldn't see the other thing before. And I've seen them actually do this. They'll change an image and literally upload the new one. And like for instance, the picture of the century, they did that 6 times. They changed the image 6 times, and while I was watching them do it, and then they'd upload the new one, and I'd download the new one, and they'd upload another one, and I'd download that one. And literally, I have like 6 different pictures of the century images where they're all changed a little bit different. And it seems interesting to me that that NASA, I don't know, I think because they're a corporation and they're an American identity and an icon and all that, they're very interested in their propaganda, they're very interested in their commercialized product for the space agency to sell basically the American people a lie, because they know darn well what's in those images before they cover them up. And it seems like we, American taxpayers, had paid for their own lie, $18 billion a year, over $4 trillion over a period of time. So it seems to me that there's really something like that going on. They're definitely covering up human origins, that we came from space.
Wow. DJ, your turn.
Yeah, this is very interesting tonight, folks. We're sort of getting into forensic archaeology and xenoarchaeology, and excuse me. You'll notice in the world we break everything down to art, culture, science, education. Let's see, art, culture. I hadn't said this in so long. Art, culture, education. Art, science, culture, education, history, and folk life. Sorry, had to find it in my brain. But basically, we use that in the world, and this stuff. It's just like Bret said. We are basically rewriting our history based on Göbekli Tepe and other places such as. And he's brought up some great information on digital art, or that which we are assuming comes from satellite imagery. And I think we're opening up a whole new digital transformation that's going to be very competitive. I know we've had Joe, is it Montanilo? Jose Monta, I think you mentioned his name.
Oh, Escamilla?
Yeah, Jose Escamilla on here. He brought all this stuff, and I was going to work with Janet and I in Nashville to promote his movie over there, his video. And we never got back with him, and then I saw him having some health issues. He wrote to me on Facebook, stuff like that. But there's many, many people doing this, and I'm just, personally, I know this sounds wicked, but you're more of an artist than I am. I never was that much interested in the moon, and I think a part of it was great because, and I think that was part of trying to get people interested in space travel with NASA and our governments worldwide, even with the Russians, was the fact that it was so boring to watch the NASA channel, It's just, so I believe that what we're doing here with the Alien Contact Organization is bringing in more artisans and artists and musicians and the co-creative process. So you mentioned DGI, digital and you mentioned Göbekli Tepe, and you do the moon, but you also do a lot of art, and it's based on our history and archaeology and anthropology, and it's a crossover. It's really a combination, and right now, many of the kids, like at the gym, they understand the word xeno, and of course we know archaeology, if they go to the universities, then it falls down to folk life. And then one of my persons that worked at the newspaper with me, I watched him grow up, and he went on to get a master's, and he teaches over here at Western Kentucky University. But he's teaching pop culture. But how would you say for the people out there wanting to get education in what we're doing here, it's sort of a crossover from art into the new age of digital transformation, and still we want kids to grow up knowing, because we're talking about some heavy stuff here about how we're changing our own history with blowing our feather dusting, or anyway, artists doing this at NASA, and I happen to know that is a real job. I don't know if it's called digital photography or forensic photography. So what is this called now? Because there's so many artistic social media groups out there on Facebook and websites now. What are we doing to change the future? Because you brought up not only the moon, but Göbekli Tepe, and we're all about this new xenoarchaeology and xenolinguistics and all that. What do you? Because we all have different names for our groups, similar interest groups, but they're becoming highly competitive out there.
Oh yes, it definitely it is all very coalesced, in the studies of human origin, very much so. There's some of the things that are a part of the digital. What's funny is that NASA has changed the images from the original, and what's amazing is that still there's extraterrestrial communication coming through, especially because they changed the frequency. That's what's really interesting. And another very interesting thing is all the lunar orbiter images and all the I believe the Surveyor the Surveyor Mars images were literally developed in space. So there was no chance for them, for them to do anything digital in the process when they got the data back to Earth.
Well, they wouldn't be putting it out to the public because all that comes in on classified satellite imagery, but they have ways to let the people leak it, and then there's the ways that they don't. So there is some type of educational government involvement, and you think that maybe ET guided as well.
Well, just about all of them that I've talked to people that are working in the secret government, that are still working in the secret government, that have given the oath, so they say. I can't say, I don't mention my name and all this jazz. I've talked to astronauts within that system. And they've said that they've seen the exact same thing that's in my images in space, literally, as a hologram from the capsule. That really.
What does that mean?
That told me, or what it means to me is what that told me is that that it's based on frequency, that there's literally that frequency that they're snapping a picture of.
Oh.
So it's a very interesting thing. The other interesting aspect of it is that the frequency is also coming through our lines and through our house and everything else. When we do digital work on the computer and whatnot, and some of our filters are actually lowering a certain density and allowing a certain graphic frequency to happen, because even sound waves and any various different kinds of waves, radiation, all of these waves literally carry light information and make an actual picture if we process it correctly. Isn't that interesting?
So
Yes.
is this going to be a new art form, or is this already in the? You're an artist and in the art world.
I was told in 1982 that these were done by various artists.
Wow.
So I would expect that, yes, it will be a new type of art form.
Awesome.
Okay, let's pass it to John. Give him a chance. John, your turn.
Hey, Brett, I got a comment and then a follow-up question. So everybody has mentioned the lunar orbiters in the 60s, mid-60s to 1967 prior to the first moon landing.
66 to 68.
Okay, and just based on my research, I believe that we landed on the moon way before that.
Yes.
But anyway, so have you ever heard of Farouk El-Baz?
I believe so, yes.
Farouk El-Baz, his father was an expert on the ancient Egyptian stellar religion, and between him and his father, they were able to come up with a mathematical formula to aim the space shuttle at the moon, because of course you can't just fly into a straight line towards the moon, you'll miss it. So you got to aim towards it, and they both intersect if you do the math correctly. And according to his calculations, they wanted to land on the Sea of Tranquility. And then that goes back to the lunar orbiters. And there's a lot of speculation as to why that area. And one of the different reasons and postulations out there is because the Sea of Tranquility at that exact day and at that exact time, within the rotation of the sun and the earth and the moon, was facing Orion's belt. And so when Neil and Buzz landed in 1969, they were actually facing Orion from the Sea of Tranquility. And then they brought wine and broke bread, poured the wine into chalices, and actually performed a communion ceremony, which I found very curious. It was almost like they were looking for the acceptance of the gods from Isis and Osiris, which I found very interesting. But I believe also that the lunar orbiters unearthed some evidence of structures and perhaps even crafts. And so when Neil and Buzz landed, NASA had basically briefed them that, this is what you're looking for. Nobody's going to know about it, and you're not allowed to talk about it. But they knew what they were looking for. I think that they deliberately landed in that area because there were structures within the area, perhaps even bases. And I did some research where I heard that they actually came in contact with multiple crafts, found multiple structures, figured out that there was multiple bases with different alien factions represented, and that they actually came in some kind of contact, whether it was telepathically or however the communication was made, and they're basically told not to return. And so they come back to Earth, and, Houston knew the story before they even got back on the shuttle to come back to Earth, and they were threatened to not say anything about it. So I'm sure in your decades of research, you could finish that story and provide more detail than I just did.
Sure. Yes, that all started, as far as Americans, were any kind of aware of, especially in ufology or whatnot, with the Eisenhower area having to do with Area 51 and so forth, and Eisenhower threatening to go in there with his army, he already saw that problem, So during the Truman administration, this is when this was occurring with the Area 51 and the creation of the Feds and the CIA and all these different departments to cover everything up, And there was quite the scramble to do so. I believe you're right. I believe they did know prior to that what was on the moon, and were looking desperately for a way to get there physically, So basically, our military was not yet on the moon. You know what I mean? But there were Anunnaki, there were different types of Nordic beings, and so on, that were taking people there. One of the contacts was in Nazi Germany. While with the whole Vril thing and the Templars and Rosicrucians and such, were contacting Aldebaran and this different star system, I believe that was a cover-up for something else, and I think it had to do with the moon and their ancient societies. And these technologies were brought over during Project Paperclip to the United States, and Werner von Braun and Schauberg and these different German scientists that were key scientists in creating, rocketry and propulsion systems. What they were really working on at that time even was anti-gravity from the Truman era and Eisenhower era, 1947 crash in Roswell. So they were secretly working on these types of technologies. The Germans had some of that technology, and we had some of that technology, and so did the Russians. And it was already a global thing to work on that technology. It's not separate. So for them to tell the public, Russia's going to come out with the truth, China's going to come out with the proof and all this, they're all working together anyway. So they were working on anti-gravity, and they finally achieved anti-gravity. Shoot, I've seen some of their spaceships that are created from the Roswell back engineering and so forth, and they're really amazing. I had someone come and contact me and tell me that they have things that make Star Trek look like a cartoon now. So
wow.
They have been going to the moon ever since the 60s, and they still are. So I hope that answers a little bit of that question.
I just wanted you to finish the thought because I knew there was more to the story than I knew just based on my own research.
Oh yeah, there is quite a bit more to that story. I knew the history of that story, and I was starting to put things together based on what I was seeing in the images. Actually, that it did have to do with human origins. It did have to do with secret societies and oaths and men that didn't believe the world could handle this type of thing. They were protecting their economic and religious systems, from going into utter chaos or whatever. And I don't think it's a big deal. I think what they're really worried about or whatever is some kind of continuity of these religious systems and economic systems. But the thing is they already won the game. They have to start the game over. So right now, all of them are saying that it's time. It's time to start the game over. It's time to tell people the truth about some of this. They're not going to tell us all of it, but they're going to tell us enough of it. And what's been leaked to me is absolute proof that there are ruins on the moon, that we were there many millions of years ago or however long. It's definitely there. And you're right about that. They knew what they were going to the moon to go look at or to go experiment with or to go visit. And there are bases on the moon, not just the far side, but on the near side. And there's also giant parabolic dishes and dish arrays, and there's craft, and there's everything that you could imagine in sci-fi, except for it's real. And that is the one thing that people are really going to have a hard time with, because it's sort of blunt. A reality is very blunt. Thinking about it as a mystery or a myth or something like that is much easier to choke down, to people. That's sci-fi. It's just in the movies or something. But what's really going to hit them is the reality of this, that we did come from space. And some schools are actually already teaching our kids this.
Really?
Oh, yeah, really.
Who's teaching it?
There's some schools in California. My daughter said, she went to school in California, and she's fairly young, and she said that they taught her some of this, what I'm doing.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Zechariah, before he passed, asked Dr. Lesson to create a program and get it implemented into the schools, which, of course, has been, monumental trying to achieve. So that's fascinating if they're actually if you could track that down, I'd love to know more about that because, that's.
Oh, I'll ask her about it. Yes.
I'd love to know more. Well, I'm very curious. There's a story that I really like. There's some stories that I get that I resonate with, and I like the story of the big ship on the far side of the moon that is the size of Manhattan or Long Island or
yeah.
New York. New York is, and they have that picture of it, and they say it's this big. And then there's another story about the Mona Lisa. I don't know if we talked about it or if I talked about it with somebody else.
Yeah, a little bit.
But I like the Mona Lisa. And then I found it then it said that she's...
that looks eerily realistic to me, yeah.
Yeah, she thought she's not alive and she's somewhere... They brought her back to Earth, and that just reminds me of what Thoth Nagashita said in the Emerald Tablets, that, his body lays in stasis and he sends his consciousness out into the universe, and he comes down in many forms like the thrice-born Hermes, and so that connects with the story that the Anunnaki are sending threads or traces or tracks of themselves down into physicality. So anyway, to me it all tied in. I just wondered what you thought was going on there. And then the other thing was this, I always look at the disinformation as well as the information because there's a kernel of truth. So there was and the reason why I'm really focused on this, they had what do they call it? The little module that's on the moon that's doing on the pictures, the rover thing. He had taken a picture of the Mona Lisa that was in the moon module, right? And so it had this, and it looked pretty cool. It looked like her face, but it had the horns of Hathor, and it was a video, and I captured it, and then they took it down. So if it was fake, why did they remove it? And now a year or two come by, and they said, oh, that was just people did a sand drawing. So I was fascinated to look at it like, well, why go through that trouble to, take it down and then come up with a cover story? So
right.
What do you think of all this?
Oh gosh, one thing that's curious about the Mona Lisa footage, I believe it's fake. If it's not, if it's real or whatever, that'd be even cooler. But I think it is a recreation of something very real. And what's interesting is that, they went into really fine detail. And like on a newborn baby, how's there's that kind of that white crap on their face and stuff. What do you call that?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Newborn baby stuff or whatever. That's what it looked like that was on the stasis creature, or the humanoid. Yeah, it looked like she just came out of the womb, Very interesting. And I don't know about the recreation of the sticks with the eyes or whatever. I guess that's to keep the form of the face or something, Very interesting.
Well, that was supposed to be how she drilled the because it was connected to her third eye. Everything connected to her third eye. So it was like an old system on how you would use your facial muscles to drive the ship without having to use your hands or something.
Yes.
That's what I got her. I read her.
The body was apparently not drug out of the giant ship, the cigar-shaped ship that was as big as Manhattan, but the triangular-shaped ship that was next to it. And a lot of people don't know about that, but that's where it was actually taken from, supposedly.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
In the story, the large the large craft.
That all used to be out on the internet, and now it's down. You can't find it anywhere.
Oh yeah, because it's just too real. Even as a tabloid feature, it's just too real. And a lot of this is seriously coming out. I think that's why they're taking some of that down. Because it's it's sort of a mockery of what's real, It's like it's something that
I took it off of my website. I put the connection.
Oh my gosh, wow!
On my website, between the Mona Lisa on the Mars and the Mona Lisa on the Moon, and it was there for about a year or so. I went back and it's gone.
Oh wow!
And then they had gone into my pictures I had. I made some snippets from the YouTubes. I used the snippet tool. And they were gone from my computer. So they really wanted it gone. Now we're talking about it.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you got to remember the internet and get your history right of what we're using here. We're using the internet. Where did that come from? Packets of the DoD, U.S. Department of Defense. So
that's correct.
Everything that we're talking about is
alien
history
technology
that we are supposed to know. It just depends on who wants to tell the stories, and they're all grouping us together. That's ergo Facebook and how they control everything we do. We are controlled.
Yeah, they're very much planning on getting this information out based on human experience. That should be very interesting. Because they've lied so much that it would have to be from human experience.
Well, they'll be adapting that as well, just like people are saying that television is going to go away and all we're going to have is the Internet. Right now you've got everybody where everything is controlled, which means even though the kids used to have to, we learned it from the education system around the world, which was who controlled the education, the universities, et cetera, so they couldn't do that. And the books, maybe some will still be there, but everything is going to be electronic in the digital age. It's all information, and information is power. So who controls the information controls the power.
Yeah, another interesting thing, it's going to mostly symbolism, and mostly graphics. They're almost steering away from any kind of books or reading or anything like that.
How many kids can really read and write?
Right, exactly.
I've had them tell me I don't need to. I'm like, what? Because they do. They use symbols. And I think even when I went to Japan, I couldn't speak the language very well, just to get by. But I ate my pictures.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's full circle because our written language used to be symbols, the graphics.
Yes.
So we're going full circle. Let's give Karen a chance to talk and ask a question of Bret. Am I still on sequence? Yeah, let's get back to Karen. And then,
I'm here.
Go ahead, Karen, take your...
Oh, yeah, I wanted to go back to the lunar hologram issue because this is something I've been tracking in relation to working with Bret. And I just, first of all, want to tell people, just Google lunar hologram. And the reason why I think this is important is because we've got to realize that just because we haven't, humanity isn't, you can imagine telling people 20 years ago that you were going to have a computer in your pocket and that you could access all the world's knowledge. That would have been really shocking to people, and yet here we are with the Internet. And the hologram issue is important because it has to do with what technology, conceptually, it's about technology, but it's also about our reality construct. I also work with the Foundation for Research, the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, and I wanted to get him in there because he is one of our heroes of wanting to tell us about the quantum hologram, and that's a reality construct might be a quantum hologram. The reason why I'm bringing that up is because that was the other interpretation of some of the imagery that Bret and I have been looking at, is that it's a surface hologram. And if you can imagine in the future where you would have a statue, but it wouldn't be made of stone or metal, that it would be a hologram standing up in an art gallery somewhere, a futuristic art gallery. The idea was, are there lunar holograms hovering above the surface? And we speculated, trying to figure out what that was about. And what we figured out is it might be an aid to navigation. So if you have a UFO, you're driving a UFO and you're going really fast, 2,700 miles a minute, you're going really fast. You come into the planet, a planet you want to land on Earth. We have very large geoglyphs like the Nazca lines and whatnot, where people up in a craft could say, oh gosh, I need to land there. Or even the pyramids could be considered something on the ground that you could recognize and know where you were landing. Maybe in the past they were used for that, at least one use for them. But another thing is, what if that was true on the moon, and these giant figures, these legendary figures, like you would land, you go to see where Poseidon was, and you would land your craft inside a base, inside his a stone on his trident or something similar. And so we talked about that quite a bit. And I just sent down at you a link of some videos that we did about that. Maybe you can put it up later. But when you look up lunar hologram, you'll find out there's speculation that we always see the same face of the moon all the time. It's always facing us. In terms of planetary dynamics, that's weird. Everything else is rotating. We turn around in our own orbit. We go around the sun, and that's a circle. The moon is going around in a circle, but it always shows us the same face. That's weird. So this was a speculation that we had, too. And the reason why I mention it is because part of our consciousness awareness raising to understand this is to understand that as technology gets higher and higher, humans depicted in Star Trek had the holodeck. In the Star Trek show, The Next Generation, there was a holodeck, and you could go pretend you were going on a vacation to Hawaii, and it was all inside this big, big room that simulated it for you. So we speculated on that as well, is that the races that came here had that technology. They utilized them for maybe to hide their space station, to hide their ships. Maybe they used them for displays that would pop up and hover above the air, like we've seen in some movies. But as we get more and more, our culture starts to integrate hologram technology, we start moving farther and farther down, or I guess up and up the technology, awareness, to where eventually we're blending very close to the actual quantum hologram that we're actually living in. And so, Brett, if you could just talk a little bit about that, because we have talked about it, and just tell more about what you've been analyzing.
Oh, well, like I was saying, one of the astronauts from the STS, had seen these types of holograms that you're talking about, literally, floating around in space. He said, I've seen the same kind of thing, So he was very intrigued that I was seeing these things in the digital imagery, that it picked it up. He was really excited, Some of the reason why it's sort of holographic in effect, because it's so complex. It's like a little piece of it tells a story, It'll have a face, for instance, and its headdress will have many characters in it, that are from the same story, and it'll tell a story just in the hat, So it really is that complex. It's too complex. I'm an artist, I've been doing this for years. I've seen the most complex Russian art, very surrealistic with little intricate, tiny things, and inside this and that and whatnot. And this art is way more complex than that. It's incredibly intricate. I thought at first someone was playing some kind of joke, there was some classical pieces put into the moon images. Some of them look exactly like classical paintings. There's one of the birth of Hermes, or the nativity of Hermes, and the Zeus is standing there, very proud of his son Hermes, which is literally being breastfed by a sea nymph with Thoth in the background. Everyone's there, to observe the birth, and this is all taking place in the underworld. And so you start connecting these things, and you say, well, if that's in there, is this in there? And you start looking a little bit more into the image, and you not consciously or anything, but it's really there. The other piece to that story is in the same image, and it's very, very graphic and very literally in the image, So that told me that they were storyboarding our history in this particular image that had something to do with the ancient Pelagian Empire. There's also an image, that I haven't gone way into or anything, but there's a lot of Egyptian-type symbolism. But, most of this imagery isn't what we have learned in school. It's not what we expect. For instance, they're wearing cold weather clothing, It's very real, They're wearing clothing, that's suited for the north, like for Antarctica or something. And it seems very in the imagery with these particular heroes and gods, Perseus and Theseus and all these people, that they're wearing cold weather type clothing. Their weapons are the old style. And Theseus is literally carrying a Draco, just like in the old Dacian Empire. So it's very, it's very intricate and strange how the more you get into even the little piece of the image, when you start analyzing it as an art history type work or something to that nature, like you would in art appreciation. You start looking deeply into it, and you realize that each little piece is telling a story and is so symbolic that it's got to be on purpose communication from human extraterrestrials or extraterrestrials. Isn't that interesting?
I had a tantric meditation one time, and I came in under the hologram. I saw it as well. I do remote viewing, and it was like a series of scenes, and I came in through underneath the image of I Love Lucy projecting on the screen, because that's when I was born in 1954. And the show, I think, was still on. There was some reason why I was coming in under I Love Lucy. So it's like you come into this hologram. It's kind of like what David Icke had on his one of the covers of his books. He's trying to illustrate the holographic nature in the hologram. But it's actually, and it talks about the barrier around the Earth. I actually encountered it in one of my tantric meditations and astral projection type remote viewing sessions. And I came back, I said, wow, I think I just encountered, the grid. So it was very amazing. I can't explain it, but when you do remote viewing, it's very real. It's just like, walking down the street, right? It's
I
so
agree.
graphic.
I agree. Me and Karen both, meditated and went into a dream state, and sometimes a waking dream. We do every night, to be honest, we completely, leave our bodies and communicate with extraterrestrials, and the amazing amount of information that's downloaded is just, it's too real, because we'll go look at something that no one's ever been taught about history, and it'll be there. The clue will be there for us to really dig into,
Right.
And,
that is something. That's great.
Yeah, it becomes
I think
real.
we work at night. I think we're actually working our other job or living our other life or something. Because I come back every night and I tell my husband about it. And I said, well, I did this, that, and it's continuous. It's very detailed. And I'll even know, okay, I was in this, I was on the Bureau, and this is one of the towns in the Bureau, and you take a right, you go down, and that's the art district, and there's the food desk. It's just like Earth, but you knew it was extraterrestrial. It was just too different. The buildings are too different, and the vibe was too different. It's like another dimension. Okay, I think we're going back to TJ, then John. Let me do a time check here. We have 42 minutes left. Okay. TJ, your turn. Then when you're done, pass the John.
Sorry.
Okay?
Okay.
When you're done, pass the ball to John. Talk and ask questions and get feedback.
If everything's co-creation and we're creating all this, I've heard a lot of things. And my husband and I learned about holograms before we really understood them on Star Trek. And we even put out years ago on the Internet how to make them. People were getting asking me because how to get the stuff from Radio Shack and make your own hologram, stuff like that. So, folks, a lot of this stuff has been out there forever. And the still best for you to get your own telescope if you can, is magnify and see the moon for yourself from the Earth. That way we all have been seeing it way before all this, and people have always had the moon out there. So all these people, they need to realize that all that stuff out there is real, and there's plenty of people out there that are real, just like Bret keeps saying. And my big motto is alien civilizations exist, ACE. And, all of us working together here are forming the future. And I'm going to just put this out there. I've never done this before. This is a first tonight. What if all of us are in a controlled environment And all those beings out there that we work with off planet that are just as real as you can hear me talking, but you don't know that I'm real, do you? You only see images on the internet. So you don't really know who I am or where I am. You only know what I'm telling you. Now, what if I'm really not on the planet, but I'm actually on one of those huge cities that we build out in space? And what if I work directly for the Council of 12, as my husband does? And what if we know that they put us out in the radio airwaves to get everyone to use their imagination with this little thing called the Internet that's now on the planet and controlled? What if? And so now, what if everybody on the planet, if I'm not, is all there to either use their imaginations or not? Because getting rid of all the emotions of all the beings out in space, because living for billions of years, they coded out of the DNA they had, and to get rid of emotions. And therefore, with the emotions, the ups and downs, the highs and lows, the anger, and they had no penal colonies or anyone to be evil or get mad and all of this, because it was this superlative way of being higher consciousness. There was no longer anything to judge good, bad, up, down, positive, negative in space, because there is none. So all of a sudden, these beings that come from this whole entire other universe that they didn't even know about are relatively blood-sucking, evil kind of things that they didn't even know existed, because they'd lived for so many billions of years in this utopian space, much like Star Trek, going out and experiencing all these things. But they found some, like on Doctor Who, that weren't that great. So now in comes, after billions of years, this evil influence again. And what are they going to do? So, well, they know they don't kill anybody. They would never do that. So they have to invent people, and where are they going to put them? And then they're going to have to bring back imaginations again. So what if that's our only job? If we're not using and creating and being imaginative, what good are we to these beings that are billions of years? And anything you can imagine, they've already done. But they've run out of imagination, so there's nothing else to create. And, oh, by the way, they have zero-point energy, meaning that nothing means anything because everything can be created. They know how to make it manifest, and they understand gravity and time. Therefore, anything you could possibly imagine can be created for you. It's just amazing thought, isn't it? And I'm not a science fiction writer, but I'm a wannabe. So, what do you think of that, Bret?
I think that that's wonderful, and I know that that's real.
Oh my God!
It goes. Some of that information that came out, that broke out or whatever, was from the Serpo project, and also telling the story of the extraterrestrial human exchange and whatnot. And these technologies, if they were put out properly, it is with kid gloves, because we've been taught mostly by an Aryan type of agenda, where apparently all extraterrestrials are Nordic, everyone that sees them is named George,
I had to admit that I'd been accused of being a Nordic from Area 51 on that show last night to go public.
It's not the ones that I see, I can tell you that. I see those too, sure, but they're always accompanied by others that don't look human at all. Some look like slimy little squids or something, or that's not really fair. They're actually
funny
very...
you said that. He brought that up last night, octopi or octopod. Oh, my gosh, it's like you didn't even hear that show, and yet you're talking about it. This is so weird.
Yeah, I've actually seen a being like that, very slick and black, and very, very much on a throne, after it kind of went by me or whatever, and it kind of waved its tail or something, and it was like really beautiful. And I felt bad for thinking that somehow, because of the programming, we're supposed to think things like that are ugly or something. But I didn't see the being, I felt the being. If that makes sense.
Well, we don't always see with our eyes too, so you might have seen it, but in using your other senses. Yeah.
Yes, feeling that being changed my perspective of that being.
Wow. Well, I guess I was supposed to hand the ball or the stick or the baton over to John. Excuse me, but I had to ask Bret that. So, John, you want to do that too? I mean, did I go somewhere strange for your brain, or are you accustomed to that, doing the channeling Yahweh thingy?
Well, just like all of us, I live on all dimensions. One of them I'm in a physical body. Maybe the next I'm in a spiritual body. Maybe the next I'm a king. Maybe in the next I'm a slave. But we all exist in all dimensions. And I try to see through my other higher self's eyes, perhaps standing on another terrestrial planet, looking up at 3 moons instead of just one. So, yes, I live in that same domain just like we all do, and receive
awesome.
caches of information that, when you're receiving these downloads, sometimes you misinterpret them as your own mind creating and generating thoughts, and then the more you think about it, you're like, wow, that was just too much for me to come up with on my own. I had to have some kind of external influence.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes. But that leads me to my next comment and then a follow-up question. So, you know your history really good, Bret, so I'm going to lay out some history, and I want to ask your opinion on it. So in 1937, a UFO crashed in the Black Forest in Poland, and the Nazis and the SS and the Anunnaki Society discovered a crashed UFO with live and dead extraterrestrial occupants. And then a number of years later, Werner von Braun and Hermann Oberth both admitted that they had help constructing D-Glock, which was their time travel vehicle.
And the Nazi bell and all that.
Yes, exactly. And that their entire rocket program, they received help from ET. So based on that revelation, and that had to have been in the 40s, I'm assuming. If it crashed in 1937, I don't know how many years, with the help of extraterrestrials, did it take for them to back engineer their own, space-time vehicle, the Bell or D-Glock. And they were testing it at the Henge in Poland. So does that, put that in the realm of possibility that we even had space-time vehicles retro-engineered from maybe even the 40s and 50s? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, they were quite clumsy, but they worked. Absolutely. They didn't back engineer them at that time. They were told how to make them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what's cool about it. They were literally told how to make them by extraterrestrials, also from channeled works. Just like we do, getting all this information from beings and dreams and whatnot. One of the other things that's very interesting about that is that I was talking about the Sentinel program, because the military, of course, is very interested in any extraterrestrial information, and the extraterrestrials said that they were going to contact civilians. So they came up with this Sentinel program that Karen was talking about, and they actually visit you in your dreams, in that REM state before you have an actual out-of-body experience, And they're just like guys standing there, just kind of observing you. I've even heard their boot steps in my house, It sounds crazy, I know. But there's what doesn't. The thing is that
it's okay.
The Sentinel program, it's designed to capture information through remote sensing and whatnot through people's dreams and so on. So they basically occupy a dream state, and the extraterrestrials know this, So they will literally pull you out of your body, and I have literally felt that pulled out of my body kind of thing, and my brain interprets it as me being some kind of squishy thing that's yanked out of my body. It's very horrifying and graphic, But once I'm in that state or whatnot, they have specifically told me that it is so that we can talk to you without these people interfering. So that's a very interesting aspect of.
How do we
the
know they're not
extraterrestrial
interfering, though?
Oh, they can't hear you if you're not physically in your body. You are in your spirit is talking to
They
spirit.
could hear me when I was out of body.
Yes. Oh no, the extraterrestrials do for sure. But the people of the Sentinel program, they can't see you or hear you.
Are you talking about that Project Serpo? Because I'm not familiar with it, other than just what you read on the internet.
Oh no, that's a more current secret space program project, and some of the guys that are working on that, some of that type of work was Ingo Swann and Courtney Brown, and with the remote sensing.
Oh, I am part of that project. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Oh, they're just old government PR people.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. I have to know firsthand experience. I don't do too well all this internet reading stuff, although now I'm part of the big put it in there kind of stuff,
Yeah, same here. I have to know these things from human experience, and from human experience I'll look something up to see if it even exists. I'll be like, that was really wild. Does that exist in our universe?
I treat it all like science fiction, right? It's terrible. It's almost like I'm an atheist. But, folks, you got to experience it yourself, and that's what all of us are good at. It's a very artistic thing, but I sort of agree with what came out of my mouth, although I don't remember it. But I do remember I was trying to get to the point that we're all our consciousness and imaginations. But John and Bret did a good way of saying it better. I guess I'm too much of an artist in my brain, but I don't know it. I'm too much right brain thinking. I'm trying to speak.
The art is in you.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you. I was too much a nerd, left brain logic, NASA kind of, get the facts stupid kind of girl, right? So. But, gosh, thanks. This has been great. And, John, thank you. Each one of you are so great. Janet's been putting some panels together that are awesome. So thank you, Karen, for bringing Bret and John. And you guys are a whole new thing for me, a whole new play toy.
Awesome.
For our Alien Contact org. I guess we're going to be uniquely fun. Janet?
It's fun, yeah. We have 8 left. Let me see if I have any comments or feedback. I think you were saying that you have to experience it. My husband has never really had any kind of ET contact, but he has witnessed me and facilitated me as I have done some journeying. So he's been the therapist, right? And so he believes it all. There are some people that don't have to see it to believe it. They experience it vicariously with someone who is an experiencer, and it's just as real and profound to them. So Sasha is one of those people that he says he's never really had any kind of, like I have, experiences, although he was a child of the 60s, so he certainly did a lot of experimentation with entheogens and found himself with a DMT experience, meditating in a circle with a bunch of extraterrestrials that way. And for him, that was very real, and he studied with Stan Groff, and a lot of those people seem to be accessing the same realms with their experiences with entheogens. And we're not talking about cocaine or heroin. We're talking about entheogens, which are a category that takes you towards the light, towards God, and towards the higher dimensions and planes and levels of existence. So, and then I had another friend, Bud, who never had anything happen, but he just loved to sit there with me, the psychic one that's had all these experiences, and now I'm watching a show called Medium, where the wife is having all these experiences, and the husband's very scientific, and he works in a business that's all about science and designing this and that and the other thing. So I think that it does take for some people believing it first, and they start to see it. I just wanted to add that 2 cents, and as a therapist working with people. Go ahead. What's your question or feedback?
Is that like, because you're now saying you're psychic, and it was really hard to get you to say that years ago, so I'm really shocked, Janet, that you're saying that. But yes, you're very psychic. Because I used to really pull her out because she'd see a ghost
readings
at the end
like you
of the bed.
can. It doesn't work. But I will get things for people, but I don't always tell them because, if you don't have a way of presenting it, they don't believe you anyway. So why bother? They'll just, I got poo-pooed too much in life, by saying things.
Yeah,
Well,
I had really thought about
that.
those things.
Yeah, I have fun doing that.
Okay, what is that? Go ahead. Who was that?
Oh, I had really thought about those things. You were talking about proof, looking at these NASA images, and these objects in them, or this communication and whatnot that's in them. These things don't require proof, because if we can think these things, if we can conceive any of these things, they definitely exist.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in the universe they exist.
Yeah, it's like her husband says, where did they come from? I mean, because he's a really good therapist, and I've heard some of his work, or Janet trained me with some of how they did it, because we both had some of the PhD trainers. We went through some of the same classes with Sci Seminars and Dr. Lars Sturgis, PhD, over there on the islands. But, I felt really guilty, and they brought me out in Hawaii to be who I was and to do the Psychic Network and to own the Ascension Center. And gradually I started really going back into helping people with the readings. And the readings, Janet will tell you, she used to like to just go sit and watch, because I know there's a lot of cons and snake oil, those people, but I do it on the radio for entertainment, but people really gravitate to it. It's an outreach counseling, life coaching kind of community thing. And I don't even charge. It's sort of fun to do a radio show. I'll probably do that again in September on Tuesdays. But I always felt sort of bad, because I have to say this is like entertainment. But I tell people if it helps them, that's great, right? Like doing psychic readings for them, or tarot card reading, which people think, well, why are you using cards? I only did that when I was a teenager. And I'm like, yeah, but I did all the psychic stuff, and the other way, I went to the tarot cards just to help me focus, because I'm so far out there in all these dimensions. I use them to ground me so I can talk to a person on a radio. Isn't that, you know what I'm saying? I did it backwards. I came in
that's
2 minutes
wonderful.
intentionally.
That's
but
wonderful. We all
sin.
communicate such different, take different avenues in communication, and I hope that someday, that everyone realizes that they're telepathic.
Yeah, CSP is much a part of us. We just forgot it. So hopefully we'll start using some of those parts of the brain and the junk DNA that people are like, wow. But somehow that 432 came up in another show I did last night. So John and Bret, you guys are helping me, because I'm finding ways to be, I know I'm multidimensional, we all are, but it's hard to speak sometimes in this 3D vessel.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Okay,
Karen?
Karen, we haven't heard from you for a while. Your turn.
Oh, I've just been listening and enjoying. I got a question that somebody asked me through Facebook when I posted about this show, and I thought it was a great question, because we were talking about getting personally involved, and Bret and I work with the anomaly hunters groups, and anywhere from people who've been at it a while, wonderful, experienced people that have found really amazing stuff, as well as beginners. Anyone can look at a photograph and start looking at anomalies, and someone will see something that somebody else didn't see. So I wanted to encourage people, go to the databases of NASA photographs, go to the Mars photographs. Some of them are from the European Space Agency. Look yourself. I actually finally found a couple of anomalies that I'll come out with later this year that were more of the pictorial kind Bret was talking about, and I was guided. I was reading about Thoth, and I was reading about that he had a baboon that was the wise old spirit in a baboon, body, and I suddenly looked on this NASA photograph not NASA, it was the European Space Agency photograph of Mars, and there was a baboon there, and I was like, oh my God, I'm doing it now, just like Bret. So this question came from Emil. Perhaps he, meaning Bret, can tell us about the alien base on the moon. And then this person showed a NASA photograph where they took the black void of space and they adjusted the curve tool, which is having to do with color and contrast and whatnot, in Photoshop, and then all of a sudden in the background they could see a building complex appearing on the moon's horizon in an Apollo moon image. So this is what people are doing, is using different graphics type tools, taking these black and white photographs and rendering them in different types of color, and different contrast, different sharpness, all these things. I definitely encourage people to join in, and there are, just look up on Facebook or look up in Google, Anomaly Hunter or Anomaly Hunting or Anomalies, and you can join the fun. And I think this is the new hobby for this millennium, is finding stuff in space agency photographs. And when you find one yourself, it's a whole trip, because it's like, oh my gosh, this is real. And then you just kind of go crazy. And I always feel slightly ticked off as well that they didn't tell us there were ruins on the moon or something like that. I get a little pissed off too. So, but if you could talk about, sharing with other people, because that's been a big, wonderful socialization for us as our friends finding stuff.
Yeah, I believe there are different types of bases from different types of beings, and some are co-op bases. The one Carl Wolf was talking about that he saw, and also Ken Johnston in the maintenance camera video, was the real deal. The way they described it, because I've seen it in the pictures, but the base that they had, that they were showing from the Change 2 Chinese lunar orbiter or something, that captured some kind of base, and they dubbed Carl Wolf's voice over it and all that. That one's fake. That's completely fake. They actually used image 3085_med from Lunar Orbiter 1. Lunar Orbiter 3. To put that out there. So they kind of made this little chocolate bar type base inside that particular image that was in Sinus Medai, and it was even on the near side of the moon, not the far side of the moon. So that one's fake. I've went through that, but there is truth to that myth, because I've seen the real images. I've seen what Carl Wolf describes as mushroom-shaped tall buildings, that are a couple miles high, and I've seen these incredibly large structures, that are 25 miles wide, that are definitely not part of the lunar surface and constructed of some kind of titanium type metal or some kind of holographic living type organic material. It's very strange, when you actually see these things, how real they are inside these images, The real actual base is very much like what Ken Johnston described, the light arrays inside and also the little factory type buildings inside the craters. Very true, There's also what Ken Johnston was describing, these particular lights and whatnot. And when I look at them or whatever, I see an actual array of possible dishes, or something to that nature, because they're so lined up perfectly, and they're in sort of a little patch, which is in perfect perspective, to the lunar surface and everything. And it's definitely not some kind of glitch in the emulsion or anything else. It's definitely in the image on the surface. And I've also seen these little dish arrays on the near side, near Tycho crater and such. And it's very fascinating to me, the reality of what's really on the moon and the fantasy that's been described or put out to the public, in tabloid type form. That's very interesting to me artistically. But I think the point is that it really does exist, and that will come out.
So it's not just all art and science anymore. It's all, we're being whole-brain thinkers, and we're all being open-minded, and we're creating a whole new history. But we're looking at our ancient history, right? And some of our ancient history could possibly be on the moon.
That's
and a lot
exactly
of people
right.
are using this NASA images or whatever you want to see. Just people, please do your homework and enjoy yourself and get it direct. But when you don't and you're using everybody else's stuff that we say is regurgitated and always has been and all that stuff from billions of years ago, there's a reason that you're thinking about that now. And if it feels good and it's not hurting anybody, go for it. Because don't be held back because you're worried about what other people think. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but we're all artists. We're all psychic. We're all ETs.
Oh yeah, I think that's wonderful. I think that the military insecurity, thinks that people will take that and chaos will occur and all of these things, but I don't think that's the case. They've been training us in sci-fi movies all these years, to see these things. And I don't think it will. I think it will change things for the better when people learn how to communicate the way extraterrestrials communicate. As opposed to this completely regimented, insecure language. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so many people raise your consciousness off the planet. We have ways to do that now. So, a lot of kids start looking at the moon. I did, my children did, and if you guys can do it from experience, then you wonder about the moon and what all else is out there. But you've got to know that it's as above, so below, and everything out there is just like down here. We have our different groups. We have some that are great and some that are not so great. They're just researching, and my husband says that all they'll say is, yeah, but we put them back. It's like, well, wait, the council doesn't want you doing that. We don't want you taking the little new souls on this planet and going up and doing that. So we all have to help agree to co-create and use our imagination. So whatever works for you. And the symbols, like Bret said, we are going to symbols. And, I don't know which way it's going to go, but words to me were always important. So I hope we stay with the history on the planet with the pictures and the glyphics or glyphs or the writing. I hope we do. And the Internet, I don't know. It's what we put in there, folks, right? I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Science is about discovery,
I think so. That's the most exciting part. Go ahead.
Yeah, science is about discovery, and it doesn't end there,
Right. Let's give everybody one more chance to say some things. We're running out of time. Who hasn't spoken for a while?
John?
John, would you like to talk before we run out of time?
Yes, I'll be real quick. I've been looking through your photos that are on the Aquarian Radio site, and folks, if you're listening, you got to look at every single one of these photos where he's taken some artistic and creative liberty to add color so that you can see dimension, so that you can see physical form, shapes, like human-like shapes, animal-like shapes. It's really fascinating.
Where are you looking, John? I want to look.
On the Aquarian Radio site under tonight's show. But he's attached a title to each one of these photos. So I'm going to name a number of them that I, impressed upon me enough to write down. I'm going to throw them at you, Bret, and comment on the ones that that resonate with you the most. For example, the moon wild boar and clue with the ball of twine used by Theseus to escape the labyrinth. Wow, man, that is incredible, and that puts into my mind a term called archaeoplanetography, where, from perhaps thousands of miles away, you look down at a planet, the Earth, the Moon, Mars, etc., any really stellar rock in the universe, and you can actually start to see human-like formations, body shapes. You can see animals. It seems like a lot of animals and humans. That one really stuck out to me quite a bit. And then the moon lizard, Luna City was pretty fascinating to look at. The Moon Anomaly 6, where you could clearly see a UFO on Mars, on the moon. And then the moon, Theseus, and the Goatman father, Aegeus. Anyway, which one of those stands out to you the most and
all of them
with you the most? All of them.
The one with the clue, the wild boar, is one of the trials of Hercules, And within the body of that boar, who has a ball of twine, it actually has Theseus's twine in his mouth. In the body of the wild boar is the actual labyrinth, where he killed the Minotaur. So it gets a little wild, when you start really looking.
Red, I like your nativity. I love that. Nativity of Hermes. That was awesome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Some of those look like beautiful paintings, when
They
you're
do.
done. You know.
Thank you, John,
that one's, yeah.
Thank you for pointing it out. Janet, thank you for posting all this for us. Awesome. This is a great
hard.
thing. I know you do, baby, and we love you, and I'm sorry you got to go through this nose stuff you got to go through. She's had too many implants over her life or something. So, yeah, but Bret, awesome. Yeah. Go ahead, Janet.
Also, I'm having a reaction to the implant that they put in my nose when I was 4 years old, and I got to go get these polyps out. I think polyps form is a form of a protection for the body, and it's a foreign object. So, yes, ETs, you screwed up your experiment with me. Please correct it. Okay, we only have 10 more minutes. I'm not sure what we want to do in the last 10 minutes. I know I want to give everybody a chance to say who they are once again, their websites and that type of thing. So there's 5 of us. So let's do 2 minutes each. And we'll end with Bret since he's our guest of honor. So let's start with, let's see, TJ, John, Karen, Bret, and then I'll do the sign-off.
Well, I want to thank everybody. I just want to thank the panel. All these people are brilliant. They're sweet. They're got a good soul, and I'm just excited about them being on tonight's Alien Contact Hour with Janet and I. So just Google Teresa J. Morris, if you will, or TJ Morris Radio, or Alien Contact Organization. But my phone number's out there. I'm a public figure, and I would appreciate any return on your comments. And please, I'm very much into the outreach and making friends, and I'm on social media. And Karen's teaching me to do more groups so people can have similar interest groups, and so she's going to be helping us a lot, so thank you, Karen, for that. John, Bret, thank you so much, and I hope we can do this again some night on our Alien Contact, and we have other shows with Janet and I, so please look for them, and look for TJ Morris Radio out there on Blog Talk Radio, along with Aquarian Radio and all the other website and groups we're creating. Thank you very much, and I think it's John next, is it?
Reverend John M. Polk, and thank you so much, Bret, for the cover design of my new book, Yahweh, the Biblical God is an Alien. And a week from today, so I won't be a co-host on the show a week from today, I'm going to be in Portland, Maine at the Experiencer Speak 4 conference. You can Google Experiencer Speak and find out about all the speakers. Keynote speaker is going to be Travis Walton, and very excited about it. Real quick, my website, where you can find all my information about the book, is alienoraclescrolls.com and or johnpolkmedia.com.
Okay, Karen.
Yes, hi. I wanted to share, since we were talking about channeling and all that sort of thing, I actually wrote a channeled encoded poetry book, which teaches a lot of life physics type principles, as well as, you know, the behind the scenes of our reality construct. In a poetic form, it's a tiny URL, tinyurl.com/thought equals. Thought, like you're thinking with your brain, equals. All one word. That will get you to my page for my poetry book. I'm helping Bret with our ongoing research in the Lunar Anomaly Research Society, the Earth Anomaly Research Society. You can find us on Facebook, and we'll be getting his book out. He can tell you about his digital moon book. And I'm also assisting with booking and with co-hosting here on Aquarian Radio. I'm really super excited to work with everyone on Aquarian Radio. Listen to our series on the A.R. Borden cohorts. We're going to be now named the Linkage Institute. We shared our first major Linkage Institute show yesterday. Watch for more of that. And thank you so much for people listening. Everyone listening is really got their heads in the right space, I believe. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Bret.
My name's Bret Sheppard, and I really enjoyed the show tonight and meeting everyone again, and TJ for the first time, and I love talking to you guys. And Karen, we always have great conversations. My book is gonna come out this fall, hopefully soon, and it's called Digital Moon. And you can find some information on that at digitalmoonbook.com. And I'm very excited to share that with everyone. And it is of my human experience that I talk about these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bret, TJ, John, and Karen for coming on today's show. I am Janet Lesson, bringing you the Aquarian Radio Network. This coming week, we're going to have on Thursday another episode of We the Anunnaki. Perhaps it'll feature the Linkage Institute. Karen Patrick has been helping me with the schedule, so we're working on that. And on Friday, we will do another episode of, we'll do Experiencers Network next Friday. We should see who's going to be on. Anyway, I don't have my book out. Sunday, this coming Sunday, the 23rd, just right date, is Kawani Lasperitis. Nobody pronounced that. And Kelly, his wife Kelly, and they're going to report to us on Bigfoot and what's happening, and is that a dimensional being of this reality, interdimensional being? Who is this being? Is it an extraterrestrial being? And so all those questions will be answered. Kawani, I've seen him in person. He's fascinating. Okay, I pulled up my schedule. On the 27th, I think it's the 27th, we will have PJ and Charlotte from the Linkage Institute and the AR Boarding group. And so that'll be Thursday the 27th on Aquarian Radio. Friday the 28th, we have Ray Kasalundich, who is an experiencer. We're working on our guest for Saturday the 29th, which we will announce. And that's as far as I'm going to go. If you're interested in being on our show, please give us an email at aquarianradio@gmail.com. We're looking to interview experiencers. You do not have to use your real name, and you do not have to be on for 2 hours. If you want to come on for 10 minutes or 5 minutes and just tell your story, we're fine with that. We can have you come on, and you can tell us what's been happening to you in terms of extraterrestrial contact and paranormal experiences, because this will help free us all from the perverted matrix and awaken, become conscious, evolve, and hopefully be enlightened and facilitate the ascension process, take us to the dawning of the new age of Aquarius, from the dawning into the age of Aquarius. All right. Contact us, aquarianradio@gmail.com. And we have many Facebook pages. Go and find us, friend us, and spread the word. Because together, it's going to take each and every one of us. Together we will co-create a world that works for all of us and not for just a few at the sacrifice. For the, of the many. A few at the sacrifice of the many. That's what I want to say. All right, thank you so much. Love and blessings and aloha. Give you some music.
Have you heard? Metro by T-Mobile now includes Amazon Prime. Yes, enjoy the best of shopping and entertainment, movies, TV shows, music, free shipping, and much more. All included for just $40 per line for 3 lines. All on the T-Mobile network. Discover the smarter way. Metro by T-Mobile. That's genius. One offer per account. Offer subject to change. $12.99 per month value. Offer valid for new Amazon Prime members. Metro customers may notice reduced speeds versus some T-Mobile customers. Video at 480p. Capable device required. See store for details and terms and conditions.